All doing great. It's Friday night, the 5th of March. I know everyone is talking about, if you're into fictional films, Coming to America is the latest thing. I've been inundated. People have been congratulating me. Let me tell you why people have been congratulating me. Because they believe that why people believe that I am in the film Coming to America, because you have the likes of Wesley Snipes and Michael Blackson. All of them are wearing army uniforms. And I'm sorry to disappoint my listeners and my viewers and my fans. I am not in Coming to America. I have nothing to do with Coming to America. But enjoy the next couple of weeks talking about Zamunda. As you know, I created my own nation, Laughter Republic, 11 years ago. So I'm not jealous in any shape or form. I'm actually glad for people who are enjoying watching fictional films. Who knows, maybe one day I should produce a film, Laughter Republic at war with Zamunda, who knows? But enjoy, but it's not me in any of those films as we speak. I am really pleased and really honored. I mean, the thing about these podcasts that I've been doing over the last 2 months or so is the fact that I've been touching base with people that I haven't spoken to for years. And there's a reason. As a very busy performer, as a comedian, as you know, I have been traveling all over the UK, getting my message across to the British people, and I've not really been in touch with people who I regard as friends. I have a very special guest. I call him a ghost from the past because I can't remember the last time we spoke. I probably think the last time we spoke was probably about, I'm talking well over 10 years ago. I might be wrong, but he will correct me. Well over 10 years ago. He's a very, distant friend, but the lockdown is going to make sure we reconnect. And today is about reconnecting. But the other thing I want to share is that there are lots of Nigerians out there who are doing really important things, who are having an impact on the communities that they represent. And at times we don't get to hear about them because, either people are busy or it's not just the sort of thing that they want to listen to. But Juwon is very special. Juwon Ogungbe is a London-based composer, singer, theater maker, whose music draws inspiration from opera, Western art music, and African music. Apart from creating music from film, television, and radio, Juwon writes a daily blog, which he posts on his website, www.juwonogungbe.com. He also presents weekly podcasts, vlogs that can be found on notable social platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But you would have heard me say that he's an opera singer, an African, a Nigerian opera singer. That is where I'm going to start from, actually, apart from trying to understand where he has been. He's an African opera singer, and that is something so unique and almost unheard of. Because I remember when I first met him, and I thought he was going to be someone who would be singing Afrobeat or Fela. And I remember him inviting me to somewhere in Bethnal Green as part of an Arcola Theatre event, and he sang his heart out. And I just, wow, this is different. It sounds really like, how would I bet the best way to describe it? It's opera. It's just basically opera. So with no further ado, Juwon Ogungbe, it's been a long time. I am so pleased you're alive and kicking. There are so many people that are no longer on earth, so we must be grateful that the fact that we are almost surviving this pandemic. How have you been? Where have you been? Why haven't you been in touch?
I've been around, keeping my head down during the lockdown, like most people, I guess. What else can I say?
Yeah, most people have been keeping keeping a low down. But how has the lockdown affected you? Because you're a performer. It's almost similar to comedy. You're always constantly out there on stage performing. How have you been able to cope? How have you been able to maintain contact with your audiences?
Well, actually, quite a lot. Right from early days of the lockdown, I was approached to do a classical music song recital by Black professionals, and I did that. There were several other projects I was involved with, like say with the Arcola Theatre Company, that we did, changed and adapted from like being stage performances to be presented on a platform such as Zoom. So that meant we needed to change the scripts and like, you know, make them different somehow. Um, and we performed those. We rehearsed and performed them to audiences on Zoom. And then after that, like with Utopia Theatre Company, which is a theatre company that does a lot of African theatre, I did a project that was to do with devising music theatre that lasted over 5 weeks and had like an ensemble of like some professional and some semi-professional performers who were all involved in like devising, script writing, composing, and like rehearsing to perform. And eventually we presented a performance of the work we did. So all of that was happening early in the lockdown, actually. And apart from that, I've been doing like my vlogs and I've been doing my podcasts, which are all sort of performance oriented. In every podcast, I write a script and I write a short song, which I perform. I then like practice, perform, put together in the vlogs. Similarly, I write a script and I also write a short song, which I practice and then sing within that presentation. So I've been sort of performing, but just in a different way.
So the vlogs and the podcast, is that something you were doing before the lockdown or as a result of the lockdown?
Well, I write a daily blog that goes on my website at www.juwonogungbe.com. But it was on the cards that I was going to start podcasting, but I just needed some time to get to grips with the software that I was going to be using to do it, or the app that I was going to use. And I didn't really have a moment to pause before the lockdown happened. So when it happened, then suddenly I was like, okay, here's an opportunity to get into that. And so it was from then that I started. So now I've done 49 podcasts.
Wow. And what's the name of your podcast?
Multiverse.
Multiverse. Okay. And so you do them weekly? Is that what you do?
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's talk about your opera singing. And I'm interested in why opera? Why not Afrobeats? Why not pop? Why not R&B? What's your background? What influenced you to go into opera singing?
Well, I mean, I'm attracted to performance in a wide sense. I have always liked classical performance, and by that I don't just mean classical singing. I like classical acting. I like seeing Shakespeare productions, or or Greek tragedy or whatever, or ballet, or all those sorts of things. I enjoy them, and I've enjoyed them not from like yesterday, right from when I was at school, and like I always wanted to be in things like that when I was a kid, and so it's just something that's been part of my sort of journey of development. And I started like making my own sort of music theatre pieces and music drama pieces, and I've been like studying singing, and the singing teacher came and saw one of my performances, and she said, "You should join an opera company." So I'd already been like studying singing, but then the next stage was to actually go and be in operas and perform them.
So where the influence to go into opera singing, was that when you were in Nigeria or when you were in the UK?
In Nigeria, I think, well, nowadays I think it's different. I think people like, say, teenagers and people in their 20s now probably have more access to that sort of stimuli than they had like when I was a teenager in Nigeria. But having said that, we did have like exposure to some of, well, what I call the repertoire. In other words, like the music, the actual, well, you could say like the musical literature, as in like the songs or whatever that classical singers would sing. So I was familiar with some of that music when I was in Nigeria, in secondary school. but there was no one, there was no expert, there was no singing teacher who could say, well, this is how you do classical singing, if you see what I mean. Whereas I think nowadays, maybe some of them have, maybe there are some people like that in Nigeria, or in Lagos in particular, probably more people like that than those days were. My days, my time.
So right now in Nigeria, is there a market for classical singing? Do you do any exchange programs? Have you ever been to Nigeria to perform classical singing?
No, I haven't actually been there to do anything remotely classical. The last time I performed in Nigeria was, good God, it was 1999.
Wow.
And in those days, I was still a band leader. And so I was performing my music, which was like influenced by, you know, lots of stuff, like including Afro stuff. I don't, not Afro beat as such, but you know, I guess like it could be maybe like Manu Dibango or those kinds of artists or whatever. My music was like that with the jazz element. Although I was already studying classical singing, I was already performing opera at that point in time. But I didn't do that. Although what I did do though was that because my music teacher from secondary school came and saw me perform, and she said, "You must come and sing in my church." And her church, she was like the music director at the Chapel of the Healing Cross in Idiaraba, which is like, it's a massive church, one of the mega churches, I think, in Lagos, like where a lot of elites go to. And they asked me to come and sing like arias from like Handel's Messiah in that. So I did some classical singing in that context.
Wow.
That in that particular visit, yeah.
And what was the response like? I suspect your audience were people who understood classical singing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like there were people that apparently that heard, oh, there's this guy who sings, who's a proper classical singer, and he's around, and he's one of us. And like they came, like, you know, sort of old military guys and all sorts of people that turned up,
Wow.
you know, to hear. You know, it was kind of interesting.
Wow. Wow. And you have obviously you've maintained contact with them. What I'm trying to figure out is whether there's still a market for classical singing in Nigeria.
Well, I think there's probably more of it now than there was back in the day.
Okay.
Although, I
Okay.
mean, I don't know that you can make a proper living from being a classical singer in Nigeria, though. I don't think you could do it like you would do it in Europe or the United States or someone like that. No. But, well, like even South Africa, where there are quite a lot of them, I think they still have to leave South Africa to go elsewhere to have a decent sort of like career as a singer, you know. But the point is that it's a bit like there's that thing with the ballet. I don't know if you saw those children or that kid that was dancing in the video went sort of viral.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that sort of thing. There's that, well, it's kind of inspiring to people that there are people that can do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I think we still need to find a way to make it speak to wider kind of sectors of the public, so that it's not, well, if you could go there and sing Mendelssohn or Schubert or whatever it is, it's kind of a bit too far removed from the culture of the people. But I think if there's more music that is kind of, well, that comes from the aspirations and the lives of the people, and there are people that sing with that technique, then I don't think there would be an issue with it. It's like, well, you have a soprano who's singing a Yoruba folk song or singing whatever with the right kind of accompaniment. I don't see why that can't be like very popular. It could be, you know, it just depends. It's like, well, I mean, in a way, like classical singing It's a bit like it's singing. It's singing. It's a bit like acting. It's like, say, like Ben Kingsley, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Kingsley is a fine classical actor, but he was in Steven Spielberg movies. He was like in Schindler's List. He was in all that stuff. Yeah, you know. Or there are lots of other people like that. You know, that you could mention that had great careers as classical performers, but also did contemporary things. And I think that's the next stage of development for us to use our skills and make them make sense to our people, you know, in a far and wide sense.
So do you see, thanks for that. That's really informative. Do you see classical music, for example, or classical singing? What I'm thinking of is, could you do a fella song and sing it in the classical way?
I think it'd have to be the right one, the one that kind of that lends itself to that kind of approach.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's some things that if you do it, it's going to sound like silly.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And that could be from any form, any kind of performance style to another. It's not necessarily just the classical thing, because sometimes people want to laugh at that classical style. But then I'll give you an example. Liza Minnelli. Are you aware of Liza Minnelli?
Yeah.
Well, like Liza Minnelli did a version of Beyonce's what's that one? Put a ring on it.
Yeah,
Put a ring on it.
Yeah.
And you know, like with that Broadway kind of belting stuff. And it's like really kind of funny, you know, because you know, it doesn't feel right. I mean, I love Liza Minnelli as a singer, but there was something that was a bit awkward about her singing that Beyonce song in that way.
Yeah.
So I think it's a similar thing that if you choose the right Fela song, a song like maybe Palava, I can imagine Palava could work like as a in the classical way. Yeah. If someone sang that, it might work.
But it's not something that you've considered.
Well, I mean, like back in the day, earlier in my career, I used to do a lot of stuff, you know, playing music of like Nigerian musicians who were kind of well known from the past. I wouldn't say that Fela was ever somebody that I kind of put on a pedestal beyond other Nigerian musicians. So I would have like Ebenezer Obey, I'd have Sunny Ade, I'd have all that kind of stuff, and Fela together, and like sing those songs and play that music. But nowadays, I don't really do so much of that.
Yeah, cool. We all move on. We all have other things that influence us. In terms of your family members, your parents, how did they react to you going on this classical singing journey as a full-time job? You know how parents are. They tend to want you to be a lawyer or a doctor, or you know, have a proper job, as they say.
Well, I had a struggle like with my family for a long time. Well, for as long as my father lived, really, I think. My choice of career, you know, I let the side down, as it were. But we all have our lives to live. You know, my father lived his life, and I'm living mine.
Well, what did he want you to do?
My father was a lawyer, and he wanted me to be one too.
Oh, and you would have made a very good lawyer, don't you think?
Well, I mean, I didn't have because I mean, like when I entered university when I was 15, so.
You did what? You got into university at the age of 15?
Yeah, so like at that time, I had to study. Basically, you know, I was basically a minor. I didn't have any rights, legal rights. And my father said, well, I won't pay for you to do anything or whatever if you don't do what I expect from you. So I did study law for several years.
Oh, wow.
In Ife. So, I mean, and it was not like I couldn't do it or I couldn't pass the exams or anything like that. You know, that was well within like my scope. And actually, there were some things within some aspects of law that I found interesting, you know, but it just wasn't the path that I didn't see myself doing it, you know, it wasn't something, not a way that I wanted to live my life.
Mm. So do you think you are now doing your passion? You're doing what you were called on earth to do. This is your calling, classical singing.
Well, I don't only do classical singing. I'm a composer.
Yeah. Okay.
I write.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a theatre maker.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of education
Mm-hmm.
type work. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I think my calling is probably to be a sort of a creative person, somebody
Mm-hmm.
that creates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the classical singers are basically interpretative artists.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they perform music that's already been created by someone else,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, like their skill lies in how effectively they portray or make their renditions how effective they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, that was something that I felt I needed to do
Mm-hmm.
for myself, just the part of me that wants to feel that I have that ability to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But my primary kind of what's the word here? My primary act is to create.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not somebody that is really going looking for other people's music to perform.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my I would be I'm much more likely to make my own music
Mm-hmm.
than I am to sort of, to want to be kind of making a career out of forming other people's music.
Mm-hmm. Where do you draw your inspiration from in terms
No,
of when you write? When you write.
lots of different things. I mean, there isn't just one thing, but I would say that there's maybe like a sense of like cosmology about it. By that I mean um, the inner worlds of people.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say that there's a world of like sort of Abrahamic religions, as in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something that a lot of people sort of cling on to
Mm-hmm.
and say, well, this is the way things should be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people in like Asia, people in India or China or Japan might have different opinions. They
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily follow those ways of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that amongst people of African descent, we don't give enough time to all the kind of the thinking, the cosmology, the philosophies, the ideas that were handed down to us by our forebears, the
Mm-hmm.
inner worlds of our forebears. We don't give them enough time, or we're kind of like wary of them, or we've been told by Christian missionaries or Islamic, missionary Islamic alphas or whatever, that they're somehow evil or satanic or whatever. And I disagree with that. I personally feel that they are as valid ways of explaining the way we came to exist in the world as any other. So, for example, the world of Ifa or the world of Santeria,
Mm-hmm.
which is, Ifa is kind of connected to Santeria as it's practiced like in the diaspora in like South America and the
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean, or the world of voodoo,
Mm-hmm.
or the world of even Rastafari. I'm not an adherent of Rastafari, but I believe that that it's an inner world thing that is valid, and all of those things should be things that we should be kind of looking at to I don't know, to feel more sort of confident within ourselves, to trust our own selves, to trust our inner selves, trust our intuitions, what our minds are telling us. Because if we can't trust what our forebears were thinking,
Mm-hmm.
how can we trust ourselves?
Yeah, that's really deep. Do you think, no, I actually believe that Christianity has played a part, isn't it, in changing people's views about embracing the inner world?
Well, yes, yes.
Mm. Mm.
Well, I mean, I don't really have that much to say about that because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not saying that I am anti-Christianity.
Mhm, mhm,
In some ways, I am. I'm more of a Christian than anything else myself.
mhm,
My initial terms of reference in any situation will probably be more Christian than
mhm,
anything because that's where I've been brought up.
mhm,
But um, as an artist, my interest is in all these worlds of the things that Black people were thinking of in the past.
mhm,
Black people's ways of explaining how we came to exist,
mhm,
what we're all about,
mhm,
is what's in the world, how
mhm,
does the world function,
mhm,
what is the meaning of life.
mhm,
I mean, like, what do Black people have to say about that?
mhm.
That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, yeah. The black narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really deep because that's not something I've really thought about personally. And the fact that you use that as a way of getting the work that you do done is really interesting. Um, so what's the plan for the future? Because the roadmap is, when I say the roadmap, the British government will soon allow us back into society. Some of us will have to be rehabilitated. What have you got what have you got lined up for the foreseeable future if we're allowed to start performing again?
Well, imminently, and when I say imminently, I mean within the next 2 weeks, a fortnight from today,
Hmm.
I'm launching a new EP.
Okay.
Now, that EP is called Glisten and Burn,
Yeah.
and a single has been released from the EP called Samedi is Saturday,
Yeah.
and they are centering on Baron Samedi, who is like a spirit or a lua
Okay.
from the voodoo faith.
Okay.
And the whole idea is that he is like the sort of the lure of the of the that liminal space in between being dead, you know, that moment, like sort of like when it's almost like, is this person going to really cross over, or are they going to have to stay
On
on
Earth.
Earth,
Yeah.
you know? And so like Baron Samedi decides, yes, it's your time, so I'm going to show you where you go
Yeah.
when your spirit leaves like the Earth plane,
Yeah.
or no, it's not your time yet. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
stay on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Baron Samedi's role. And so, like, in the context of this whole pandemic and all of that, I had this idea that, well, Baron Samedi could, like, um, deal with, like, several sort of conundrums or
Mm-hmm.
situations, problems facing people.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with some problem scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that Baron Samedi could, like, offer advice about. And that's what Glisten and Burn is all about. It's
Wow.
basically an EP, a collection of songs based on that idea.
Okay. So for my listeners and viewers, just in case they don't know what EP means, what does EP mean?
It's an extended player, so it's like it's not a full album. It's like maybe about 5 songs as opposed to like maybe 10.
Okay, and
Yeah,
that's
a
something that
single
they
would
can,
be, a
go on.
single would be one or two, wouldn't it? So like
Yeah. Okay, and
yeah.
they can download that on digitally. They can download that.
Yes, so like the single Samedi is Saturday is available already like on streaming platforms such as Spotify,
Mm-hmm.
Apple Music, and all those places. So you can get to hear it, you know, or if you want to like, you know, support the artist, i.e. me, you know, you can go to like Bandcamp
Yeah.
and pay like £1 or whatever to buy it, to download it.
Mm-hmm.
But also um, the EP is, I'm not releasing the EP on all those streaming platforms. It's only going to be available on Bandcamp. So um, you, if you go to Bandcamp, you'll be able to hear it maybe a few times. But after that, if you want to hear it again, then you need to pay
Mm-hmm.
to download
Mm-hmm.
the files.
Mm-hmm. As a performer, would you see yourself as a performer who works on his own, or do you collaborate? Do you have projects that you collaborate? I know you worked with Iroko, but when you look at your career, is it been more collaborating with other theater companies or music singers, or are you just standalone?
I think it's been a combination of both, really. I can't say that I've only been one or the other.
Mm,
Um, like I would be doing things like working with a theatre company such as Iroko,
mm,
or maybe more mainstream or large
mm.
theatre companies, or like, well, for example, the last time I saw you in person was in St. Albans at Trestle.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, that's when I saw you in person last, when I was working on a show there. Um, Now, like I could do that kind of work and at the same time be practicing, rehearsing to do a one-man show or do like a song recital in which I'd be performing with just a pianist accompanying me or whatever. And like then so I'm always kind of dipping in and out of these things like that. And that's the way my career has been, I think.
Yeah, I remember that. Wow. That I remember the theater. That's yeah, very expensive theater, I thought. Because I was planning to use that as a place for comedy, but too expensive.
Well, yes, it's not how can I put it? It's theaters are expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, proper theaters as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, like a club type place.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
I mean?
Yeah.
Proper theaters are expensive.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that.
No, no, no. I did because I loved the venue, and I thought I could, yeah. But and that brings me to the question about the theater world, which I am curious about. Um, but you don't have, I'm sure you correct me if I'm wrong, there are not that many black theater owners in the UK.
I mean, owners, so the people who actually own the bricks and mortar,
Yeah, yeah.
or so you mean who own like premises, theater premises?
There are people who run shows for Black Voices, they own the venues. Um, I'm not aware, maybe there was one in Crouch End. I don't know if you know someone in Crouch End, very small. Actually, I wouldn't even call it a theater, but it was a small theater space. I can't remember. Moss Bar Theater. Don't know if you've heard of it.
Nope, I've
Yeah,
never heard of that.
never. Yeah, yeah.
But I would say like a lot of theaters are not owned by individuals anyway. They're owned by companies. They're owned by limited by guarantee companies that have trustees and that
Mm-hmm,
sort of thing.
mm-hmm,
Anyway, regardless. So unless if you're one of those kind of like mega bucks type producer types like Cameron McIntosh or Andrew Lloyd Webber
mm-hmm,
or Saul Moss or whatever, that size of those people, they're the ones who own loads of theaters through their company.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, not just that they don't just walk in and say, "This is my theater," I'm
mm-hmm.
going to sleep here tonight. You know what I mean? It's like they are owned by the companies that they are the chief executives of, as it were.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah. Um, I guess it's kind of an area. Well, it's kind of linked with like theatre producing and being impresarios and that
mm-hmm,
type of thing.
mm-hmm,
I don't know that we've had very, very successful black theatre impresarios stroke producers in Britain,
mm-hmm,
like in recent years, to be honest. There were like some theatre companies that had premises in the past,
mm-hmm,
like African Players,
mm-hmm,
that guy called Kadiru Madi,
mm-hmm,
Sierra Leone. Like he had a space. We used to go and rehearse there and
mm-hmm.
all of that. Um, I don't think he owned it again. I think it must have been like with trustees and whatever, you
Yep,
know what I
yep,
mean?
yep, yep.
I think Talawa have like at some point in time
Mm-hmm,
had some Well, they'd have like office space or whatever. They're not proper theatre, a
Mm,
theatre that is like this is their own space.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
There might be some space. I think out of London, there's a dance company called ACE, African Cultural Exchange.
mm,
They have their own building.
mm,
But again, I don't think the people that are running that company can
mm,
say, "Well, this is my property."
mm,
It's the property of the company.
mm,
Yeah, yeah.
mm, mm. And I remember, I just remembered now, when we're talking of spaces, I'm sure you remember that at one point, I used to paint. I thought I
That
was going to be the next Van Gogh.
yeah, still got some of your paintings here.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Wow. And oh wow. And I remember you helped me get into the Commonwealth Institute. You might not remember this. I had an art exhibition in the Commonwealth Institute because you put me in touch with whoever was running the space at the Commonwealth Institute. And I had an art
Was it the
exhibition.
Commonwealth Institute or Commonwealth Club?
I can't remember whether it was the club or the institute, but it was done down. It
It
was
might have been the
council.
club actually. It might have been Commonwealth Club.
Yeah, yeah. So are you still
Yeah.
in touch with them?
Well, I don't know that that club still exists, to be honest.
Yeah. Because
The
there's a Commonwealth Club.
Royal Commonwealth Society still
Yeah.
exists,
Okay.
but the Commonwealth Club, which was like their sort of like watering hole,
Yeah.
I don't know if it exists in the same way.
Wow.
Um, but the lady that was, well, she was in charge of the programming then,
Uh,
Olivia White.
yeah.
She's still very much around,
Oh,
but she
okay.
doesn't. She's retired from that now. She still
Yeah.
does things, but she's not working with them at the moment.
Yeah. Well, wonderful space, white walls. It was brilliant. I had a good reception. And the other place I know that I don't know what's happened to them. Is it the African Centre? Used to be in Covent Garden. I don't know whether you did anything with them. I'm trying to remember now, but
Well, through the years, I did lots of things at the
yeah,
Africa
yeah.
Centre.
But what's
fact,
happened?
In fact, I performed at the Africa Centre on the last night of their end of their programming in Covent Garden.
Yeah. So where are they now? They've just gone really quiet.
Well, they went quiet, but I wouldn't say they're quiet now. I mean, they were quiet for a long time
Mm,
after the premises were sold.
mm,
But then they moved into a building near Southwark Station.
mm-hmm.
Now that's kind of Waterloo area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so they have a building there now, but it's not the same. It's just become a completely different organization, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's there, and they still have their programming, and I guess they're engaging with like a different sector now, a different segment
Mm,
of the African population. So all
mm,
those people that used to go to the Africa Centre back in the day, the
mm,
Covent Garden era,
mm.
are not really part of what goes on in the Africa Centre now. And
Wow.
like the Africa Centre of now does not have a performance hall, like comparable to the
Mm.
one in Garden.
Oh, that was the Covent Garden, the African Centre in Covent Garden was great. I remember they had this, I think they had a bar downstairs before you went
Yeah,
up. Yeah, yeah, fantastic.
restaurant.
Yeah, bar and restaurant. Yeah, what a shame. Actually, that's where I actually proposed. I took someone there and I proposed.
Okay.
Yeah, in a restaurant. Took her
Mm.
to an African restaurant and I gave her a ring. And she
Mm.
became my wife. How could I have forgotten that?
Okay.
Sorry, say it again.
I said, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just remembered now. That's interesting. Look, Juwon, it's been fantastic touching base with you. You look well. As far as I'm concerned, you're doing well. Anyway, if we can survive this pandemic, we've done well. We've done extremely well. Where can my people find you apart from your EP? What are your social handles? Social media
Okay,
handles?
starting with my website. My website is www.juwonogungbe.com.
Yeah.
I would say the next port of call should be my Bandcamp page,
Mm-hmm.
which is www.juwonogungbe.bandcamp.com.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, you can follow me on Twitter My name on Twitter is my nickname from my teenage years. This is Jim Vaughn, so that's Jimbon.
Yeah.
So at Jim Vaughn. Although if you put in my name, Juwon Ogungbe, I'm sure it will come up. Um, Facebook, Juwon Ogungbe, like there's 2 accounts there. Um, Instagram, I'm Oye Juwon on Instagram. And then there are loads of others. But those are the main ones.
I'm interested to find out why Jim Vaughn. Why that nickname Jim Vaughn? Why they give you Jim Vaughn?
Well, what happened was I wrote a letter in Lagos where we had a band in University of Lagos, and I mean I wasn't actually in uni like I was in Ife, but like these were guys I went to school with, and like I used to travel down to Lagos to rehearse with them. I wrote a letter to like a management company in England saying that we were looking for management, and they actually took the trouble to write back to me, and they got my name wrong, and they wrote Jim Bond stuff like that. And that's how.
Because they couldn't spell the Ogungbe, is that correct?
No, because they couldn't spell Juwon.
Oh dear. That's comedy gold, Jim Vaughn. That's really funny. And I think on that note, we should end the podcast. Look, Juwon, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, I know you're very busy. It's been a pleasure, and I feel really honored and privileged for you to have joined my podcast. It's
thank you so much, President. Your Excellency, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad you do. You have no choice, because if you hadn't called me His Excellency, you could actually call me Her Excellency as well, since we're now in the world of pronouns.
Okay. Him, her, they.
Yeah, him, they, whatever. But look, seriously, it's been fantastic to hear your journey and reflections. The bit that I found really interesting is the inner world, because I've never really, I call it the spiritual world, but I've never, whether that really has an impact on how I do my comedy, I really don't know. But I need to reflect on that, because I think that's really powerful, what you said about the inner world, and how it's good to hear the Black voice and the narrative and what our founding fathers were thinking of. Because for me, a lot of the history has disappeared, really disappeared, and that's where we have the likes of you.
Well, I think I wouldn't say it's disappeared. I'd say it's kind of like it's suppressed. It's repressed and suppressed. It's there. Like if you go like online and you want to find out a zillion things about Ifa, you'll find that the Cubans have written so much about it. Isn't it amazing? It's amazing that the Cuban stuff about Ifa and Orunmila and whatever is actually more it's easier to read. It's kind of like more relatable than what our own people write, because Nigerian writers tend to be a bit sort of like what's the word here? Sometimes they're a bit awkward, like with their turn of phrase. Whereas like the story, they just tell, like if it's a good yarn, a good old story, a good old myth or parable, like the Cubans just tell you the way it is. So like there's all that stuff is there. And there's so many other things like that. Like they're basically there if you want to find them.
Yeah. But on that note, Jim Vaughn, that's what I'm going to be calling you now rather than Juwon, especially since I know the reason why you're called Jim Vaughn. Thank you so much. You take care of yourself. Be good. And let's not wait for another podcast. I'm going to give you a call and we're going to have a proper chat. And maybe once this lockdown is over, we can catch up for coffee. Do you still live where you're in Islington, or?
Yes, I do. And can I say that on the 19th of March, which is like, 2 weeks from now, I'm doing the launch event for my EP.
Okay.
So if people are interested, like if they go to any of the pages, they should find the Eventbrite link.
Okay.
Tune in for that event.
Okay, and that's going to be That's going to be a social distancing event. It's obviously going to be on
No,
online.
no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. It's online. It's going to be like on Zoom or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
You know,
Cool.
it's going to be on Zoom, but
Okay.
I'm going to be singing various things, and I'm going to have like a conversation with Chukwunyere Kamalu, who is like the chairperson of the Society of African Earth Scientists.
Ah. Okay.
So that's all happening, not next Friday, but the Friday after.
Okay. So if you send me that link, and I will use that as an opportunity to also release this podcast, and so I can link the two together.
Okay,
Yeah?
cool.
Yeah, cool. Look, you take care of yourself, and catch up with you soon. My people are calling me. I'm going to address my people. I've got a Zoom. I've got another Zoom at 8 o'clock. But thank you so much, and speak to you soon. Thank you.
All right.
Okay,
Bye-bye.